Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Just a Recording podcast, where we have conversations with individuals that think differently and challenge the status quo with success and valuable lessons. I am excited to bring you this episode as we are talking to the CEO and founder of the recent sponsor for the podcast, therootbrand.com. I know I've been talking a little bit about these products, and I am just so fired up to just talk to you and let you know. I've been taking them probably for the last 2 months now, and I am blown away by them. So the brand and the company, they make these two products, and they take power from the roots of plants, seeds, and vegetables. It's all organic, vegan, gluten-free, and non-GMO, and the two products that they are currently selling are Zero In and Clean Slate. Clean Slate is a safe, simple, systemic detoxification for the mind, body, and spirit. It detoxifies your body of metals, which allow it to just formulate the temple that it truly is by using natural ingredients. It's such an incredible product. I used it and really felt incredible. We really dive into on this episode what that product does and how they used volcanic ash to develop it. And then the other product that I am really excited about is the Zero In, which is a natural brain and mood enhancement alternative to chemicals and meds. It allows you to zero in and focus on your project at hand. It really helps with brain fog and laser sharp focus. I've taken other nootropics before, and they just really haven't impacted me like Zero In has. And so I am blown away by the product and even the company and the conversation that the CEO and I have, Clayton. So thanks for tuning in. Go ahead and check out therootbrand.com/gratitude. That is therootbrand.com/gratitude. I am giving you a special invitation to have access to these two amazing products. If you are having any type of illness or sickness or having trouble focusing at work, I highly suggest you check out these two products. So go to therootbrand.com/gratitude. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. I appreciate you, fam. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Just a Recording podcast. I am your host, Patrick Moen. Thank you very much for joining us today. I am really excited for this interview with a gentleman that I was just recently introduced to by a mutual friend. He is the CEO of the Root brand, and it is the brand that I've recently just started talking about on the podcast. On the last episode, they're a new sponsor for the podcast, and I have been taking their products for probably about 6 weeks, and I have just been blown away by what the product has done, especially the Zero In. It has just really changed my ability to understand what I can use to help really hyper-focus my brain, which, a lot of people that are in this day and age now, they, ADHD, you have hyperactive disorder, everyone has a disorder of some kind of distraction, and just the world that we live in, we have things coming at us at 1,000,000 miles a minute, and our brain just seems like it's foggy sometimes. And this product is like a staple that I am just blown away by. So I'm really excited to bring you the CEO of the Root brand, Clayton Thomas. What's up, man? How are you?
Thanks for having me. And it's fun times in quarantine. One of the things you just mentioned, and it's important for me with the people I talk to. We are so focused on giving people disorders or dysfunctions, right? It's like, okay, I have attention deficit dysfunction or disorder. Maybe it's just that we're wired a little bit differently, and we've got to bring everything back in line. My mom told me as a kid, because my mom grew up in an alcoholic Catholic household. My dad grew up in an alcoholic Protestant household. So, at least there's synergy.
Yeah.
And like, I used to joke about, it's, oh, we're dysfunctional. And my mom's like, no, in order to say you're dysfunctional, means that there's a family that's actually functional.
Right.
That's not true. We're all dysfunctional. We're all full of dysfunction. And so it's just a matter of saying, okay, you know, how do we tweak what we are in order to allow us to be what we're capable of becoming?
Yeah, I think everyone also is just so they're so immediately they want to label something, right? You want to give it a label, you want to identify what the problem is. And you know, when I was a kid growing up, I was one of the test patients in New Jersey for the drug Ritalin when it first came to market. And so I mean, my mom had to peel me off the walls with a spatula. I was just bouncing around. I was a tough kid, and luckily I really matured out of like my ADHD. It still pops up in certain ways, but through meditation and through my daily practice, I'm able to control it and really navigate what happens and what to do. Obviously, my diet has completely changed. You know, what I put into my body is really just generating it at its highest potential. And so I think that, you know, probably as a kid, I was taking sugar and I was just not eating healthy. And, you know, you grow up in the 80s, we just weren't as knowledgeable as we are now about what it is that we're putting into our body and our environment. And I think that's a really good thing. But I think also we've become a society to just label, and we want to give somebody a label. You have Tourette's, or you have Asperger's, or, you know, whatever it is that you want to say. And everyone's different. Every family is different. Every upbringing is different. So I'm thankful that you kind of brought light to that. So tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're from. We'll do a little background of where you grew up and went to school and college and things.
Well, I was born and raised in a veterinary practice, and
Okay.
that created a lot of the foundation for my thought process as being around animal and human medicine my entire life, or at least my formative years initially.
Both parents were vets.
Well, this is the fun part with, you know, businesses and the way things work now. You know, and people always ask me that. They're like, "Oh, so your dad's the veterinarians?" I'm like, yeah, and my dad works for my mom. So my mom runs the practice. My dad does everything else. So it was the interesting blend, and it was funny growing up because my parents provided a really good example at home, and they worked together constantly, which, you know, I think if you talk to most couples, they go, okay, here's your life. You're going to work together and you're going to live together. And most of us as couples in our relationship would go, I'm not taking that deal.
No. Nope.
One of my friends, we grew up together. She went to veterinary school, came back, and was working for my parents. She's like, you ever see your parents fight? I'm like, actually, no, not at home. She's like, come to work with them. You'll see it come out. So, you know, growing up in the veterinary industry, you know, I was really fortunate to learn a lot about nutrition and wellness, you know, from an animal perspective and as a human perspective, you know, about the importance of diet and supplementation, kind of the stuff we talked about, or you were talking about. And I was one of those kids the same way. I mean, I was diagnosed as, I guess, ADD as a kid, and my pediatrician who wanted to prescribe Ritalin, and my mom's like, no, I'll just keep him busy. So I played 3 sports constantly. When I did, my grades were perfect. When I didn't, I went nuts. I think one of the things that helped me is when I was 4 years old, I had 2 margaritas for the first time. You talk about bouncing off the wall.
Yeah.
It was one of those instances, you know, you look back over time. My parents, Saturday afternoon, were having 2 margaritas, had the big fish bowls with all the glass lined with salt, which is why I have an affinity for salts, I think.
That explains a lot.
Had to go down the hill to the clinic. They were only gone for like 15 minutes. When they came back, the glasses were empty and the rims were clean, and I was wired. And you know, you talk about running up and down the walls. I mean, I grew up initially in a double wide mobile home, so our hallways were about this wide. And my mom called poison control, and she's like, first, I need to start with a premise of I'm not a bad parent, but my child just had 2 margaritas. They're like, is he conscious? They're like, yeah. It's like, don't let him go to sleep. So until 4 o'clock in the morning, I had feet on both walls running up and down the hall. And, you know, so you get those interesting experiences that are formative. Now I still love tequila, but
Perfect.
for different reasons. It's really beneficial for regulating blood sugar, and it tastes good, and it
Yeah.
helps.
It doesn't give you a good spike too when you drink
Yeah,
it.
it does. It keeps you balanced.
Yeah.
And through that process, I remember having a conversation with my dad when I was 12, and going on farm calls and seeing different surgeries and being around different stuff. And you have the conversation with your parents, like, okay, I want to do what you're doing. What do I want to do? And Dad, I want to be like you. And my dad told me, you're not allowed to become a doctor. Time sucks, money sucks, and you need to figure out what works for you, but don't follow my path. Figure out what your path is. And it was really interesting because I ended up going to Washington State. I wanted to be a Division I athlete, and I grew up in Southwest Washington, and so I was a white country kid and wanted to compete in the Pac-10. And
What sports did you play?
I was a sprinter. I played football, played baseball, ran track my senior year, and got fast enough after a year and a half of junior college to where I was able to develop physically, and got fast enough that I was able to compete in the Pac-10. And then I found out I was white, and I wasn't competitive.
Yeah.
And so I studied. They gave me a degree in humanities with a focus in business communications and kinesiology, because I loved the study of the body. Couldn't get away from it, even though my dad told me not to become a doctor, and just as an athlete.
So you had a minor and a major, or?
No, they gave me a degree in humanities because I studied so many different subjects. I went to my advisor at the end of my junior year, and she looked at my transcripts. She's like, well, you can graduate. I'm like, I'm not done yet. She's like, no, we can give you a degree in humanities, and you can have a focus in business and communications and kinesiology, because I studied business law, lots of business classes. One of the areas I was initially really focused in was television and radio and broadcasting, because I loved Dick Vitale growing up. I used to mimic Dick Vitale when he was calling games, and wanted to get in. I did some television and some advertising, and then I figured out that I have a face for radio and I don't have the voice for it, so it's kind of screwed either way. And then I, just looking at the process, and I was like, well, I can be done. And you look back on your history and you go, okay, what do you do with your degree? And the only thing you can really do with a degree in humanities is become a humanitarian. So that's kind of what led me into doing what I've done. But got out of college and started out in the financial services industry, because wanted to create residual income stream, wanted to help people, and love sales. I was told from the time I was 4 that I could sell anything. And I think that comes to just being socialized early. And I think if we were to talk to parents, we do it with animals, but we don't do it well with our kids, especially in today's world, that kids are like this.
Yeah.
So much screen time that we're not well socialized. We're not around enough people. And especially with the environment that we're dealing with now, that we're seeing what happens to people when our social connectivity is taken away.
Yeah.
But being very, very social and learning how to communicate, and knowing that you can't have the same conversation with multiple people the same way.
Right.
I think that's, if you call that sales, that's sales. I mean,
I call it changing your gloves. You don't want the way that I treat you isn't the way that I treat somebody else. I have to mimic my interaction with that person's perception and energy and their mood and all the things. So I want to take it back to why did you study so many different subjects in college? What called to you where you just didn't know what you wanted to do and were testing the waters, or were you just kind of, I mean, you're at a really good school. So I got to imagine, like, some of those names that you called out, I just remember kinesiology, but I'm sure some of those classes were freaking hard.
It was great. And being an athlete and having an outgoing personality, I got the model for surface anatomy. So we were in the morgue, in the freezer with some of my teammates, and I'm taking my clothes off and modeling and, doing different stuff. But I think it comes down to just the curiosity of the mind.
Yeah.
And being as broad as possible. And that's what's really created the environment to do what we're doing currently. Is you want to have as broad experience as possible. It's things that we do later in life, whether it's due to travel or reading books, that when we learn to learn, or when we've created the opportunities to learn about different cultures or different things, we want to do those. I was just one that didn't want to get stuck in a specific construct of you have to follow this path. And it was really the same. I think it's the same thing that my dad saw as a kid. He's like, you will not do well being put in a box to say you have to follow this lane. But I'm like, hold on, the left lane's really cool, the right lane's really cool, and these are dotted lines. This is not telling me I have to stay in this lane. I could go faster over here. And so it's a matter of interest. And it's what I tell my kids now, especially with the educational process, that we have to do a lot of homeschooling, whether it's due to this environment or if you just want your kids to be educated, they have to learn at home. But, taking the opportunity to think outside the box, right? Because we know that being in the box is not ideal anymore. And, just knowing, hey, if you're going to learn, you've got to have a perspective on multiple subjects, or you're going to lack depth. And if someone wants your opinion, you're going to be limited in your scope, right? And it's the same thing going with interviewing multiple people. You've got to do research. You've got to have some understanding of, okay, what's this background like? What have you done over here? And different personalities lead to different experiences. And I think that's really the important part. I wouldn't tell everyone to do what I've done as far as a path, because it's been interesting for me.
Yeah.
But, it's
like, if you think back 4 or 5 years ago, when somebody would tell you like they were a jack of all trades, you'd be like, I can't use you. I need a master of one. Now it's like, well, I'd rather be a jack of all trades than a master of none or a master of one, right? Like this Swiss Army knife of business, or, just entrepreneurial mindset is what's really kind of taken over in the business industry. And, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I mean, people were getting turned down in interviews because they had a broad, background, and they were in restaurants, they were in real estate, and they just dabbled in everything. Now that's what you need. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. You want the creativity. You want the unlocked mind, right? We don't want drones anymore. You want someone that can look at an area and go, okay, I see that you could do this and this and this. And especially in today's world, in today's environment, with how connected everything is, it's a lot like working in a woman's mind, where you have this big ball of copper wire and everything's connected. And guys, we're just in boxes, everything is separated. And you go, okay, I'm dealing with this right now. And if you ask me a question in another box, you're going to have to take a second.
Yeah.
Being able to look at things from a different perspective, and know that everyone has opinions and everyone has a different perspective, and valuing those. I think that's where a lot of businesses have grown. You look at the tech industry, because of the diversity, and you have people that would be considered outcasts in, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But now they're at the forefront of industries because they saw things differently. It's a lot of those kids that were given different diagnoses, right? It's not that they're not capable or not functional. It's that sometimes they function so quickly that, as slow as life is now, people don't know how to keep up with them. They don't know how to process information as quickly as they process information. It's like for both of us, you're diagnosed as ADD. It's not that I have attention deficit issues. It's that my mind works so quickly. If we're not engaged, I'm not going to be engaged. I'm going to find other stuff that's going to stimulate me. I'll be able to focus on what we're doing, but my mind is telling me, dude, I need to do more stuff. You're not keeping me on point here. And that's really the key.
Yeah. Yeah. It hasn't hit me like how you just explained it until you'd find yourself in meetings, like looking at your phone, and it's not in a disrespect of like, I just need something else to stimulate me, but I'm still engaged. I'm able to pay attention to what the speaker's saying, but it's too slow.
Yeah.
Like let's go.
It's like, can we turn the podcast up to +2?
Yeah. Can I 1.5x this? Yeah, same. All right. So after college, you said you got into the financial industry because you were interested in different revenue streams. How long did you do that for?
I was about, well, I've done it continually in different aspects, but it was really about 2 years. And then I had a friend of mine, come to me and say, "Hey, you know what? You've got a background in finance. You like residual income. Have you looked at the wellness industry because you have all this wellness experience?" And that's where I was introduced to network marketing.
Yeah.
And I cut my teeth on that and learned some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of those industries. And about 16 years ago, I had a product that was brought to me that was in that space that was focused on detoxification and the removal of heavy metals and environmental toxins. And it changed my perspective because there's been 2 times in my life where you go through and spiritually you get that tap on your shoulder and God goes, that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's your path. Go figure it out. And it was one of those. I've had it happen twice. The other one led to me working with my wife. And thank you, John Sally, who's all over ESPN right now because of The Last Dance. But John's my wingman. He's the one that introduced us, which is another fun story. But getting introduced to that changed my concept in wellness because I grew up around sports performance and nutrition and everything in the veterinary industry. And we've always been taught about, we can't get what we need in our diet. You have to eat right. You have to take supplements, and it's add. And there's this new super nutrient. There's all this different stuff. But what if it's what's in us that's causing the problem that we have to remove?
You think something that's already been there or been that, so not something that we ingested, it's something that's already been in there that we just need to properly remove it.
Stuff we've got to get out, so, and that's what led me down this path of looking at environmental toxicology and detoxification and looking at data that was published back in 1974 by the World Health Organization that they knew at the time that 80 to 90% of all chronic degenerative diseases were caused by environmental toxins. And then you look at data from the Environmental Working Group and, cord blood, there's 212 different chemicals, toxins, heavy metals, carcinogens in the cord blood of infants as of like 15 years ago. And we know that heavy metals, like if we look at mercury and cadmium, arsenic, lead, aluminum, cesium, all these bad guys, but mercury being the worst neurotoxin known to man. And these are things that are passed from mom into baby in the fetus and then through breast milk. And then when we're out in the world, whether it's through diet, whether it's through the water supply, whether it's in our food, whether it's something injected into us, that if it's in the soil and we inhale it, that we have all of these additional exposures, and we're this toxic soup, that is completely polluted, and it's all of these different chemicals and toxins that disrupt every aspect of our body, but do it differently, right? So how these metals and different things affect my body is going to be different than you. It's going to be different from every person that we know. And it's going to lead to a manifestation of symptoms that the medical establishment knows they can make a diagnosis of, and they can provide a drug to treat those symptoms and that diagnosis without ever addressing the underlying cause, and leads to this path of managed care. But also we see the same thing with the wellness world with different supplements that even in the wellness community, while they don't like to refer to it as such, they're still treating symptoms. They're just trying to use nutritional supplements to do it. It's, you have this inflammation issue because inflammation is the cause of disease. Well, that's just not true. You have to look at what actually causes the negative inflammation and remove that, versus trying to address symptoms. So it changed my perspective, and I started working with a natural volcanic mineral, and initially was doing sales, and then went into consulting, and then went into formulating, and went into manufacturing, and now I do a little bit of all of it.
So how did you because I learned so much about metals when I watched a lot of your YouTube channel videos, just about what root is and, clean slate, what it can do and how it removes. And you blew my mind when you talked about how what was it, that there's iron that gets removed from the bones as women age, and that's why their bones get brittle because it's a remove. Yeah, that like completely blew my mind. And I feel like I became like a metal expert after watching some of those videos. But how do you? So clean slate is from like volcanic ash, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
Yeah.
so it's a volcanic ash that mixes in seawater that creates a quartz-like crystal called clinoptilolite, which is a zeolite, which is the class of the family of clays and crystals. So bentonite, which some people are familiar with, asbestos, which people are pretty familiar with. They're all in the same class. You don't want to use asbestos for consumption because it's more needle-like and has a tendency to cause some problems in the body. But bentonite people are familiar with as a clay. Clinoptilolite's been used for millennia because it's a really unique honeycomb, negatively charged cage structure that's been used from the Romans lining the aqueducts so the water tasted better because it was loaded with lead, to today, from municipal water filtration to kitty litter to kaopectate, to dropping 500,000 tons over Chernobyl, to agriculture, to nutritional supplementation. And what we did is, through a lot of years of work, figured out a process to take what nature created and how to clean out that cage structure and how to take that honeycomb and break it into really nano fragments that are able to work from your head to your toes to do what it does naturally and grab onto stuff and flush it out.
Yeah. And when you're proposed, or when you start to do the research on the idea that this compound that comes from volcanic ash, that when you break down the molecular the molecular structure of what that is, talk to me about how you go down the path of going, oh my God, there's something here. We have to dissect what this compound is and break it apart and really find what's good and what can work for the body. And when we mix it with this, that just sounds insane to me to even think like, oh, volcanic ash, it's great for the body when you mix it with seaweed water.
Yeah, it depends on where someone falls spiritually initially, right? And you make the argument of intelligent design, and I don't care how you want to argue it with presence and who's right, who's wrong. There's an innate intelligence that's in our environment. I'm extremely spiritual, and we didn't do this alone. We couldn't have. And in ancient cultures, because I have really strong native roots, and if you look at the Native American philosophy and you look at the homeopathic space, that nature always provides, and like cures like, right? And volcanoes are the largest natural emitter of heavy metals and toxins and chemicals into the environment. So it only makes sense that in that same process, that initially the reactions that were terraforming the planet would also create the mechanisms to clean it because of the need. You can't have all of these gases and all of these heavy metals spewing out of volcanoes that are going into the environment without having something to remediate it. And then when you look at history, and this I think kind of goes back to my educational process of being rather abstract and not being focused on one thing, but to be able to correlate different areas, that if you see trends and you can say, okay, the Romans were doing this and they got these results, but then they stopped doing it and they got Nero. And then we're seeing these different areas. And for me, when I was in college, I learned how to learn. I learned how I like to learn. So when I found a subject that I really wanted to dive into, I spend more time on Google Scholar and on PubMed and reading scientific journals, just because it's entertaining to me, because I can look at the subjects and I can start drawing correlations from different things and search them to see if there's different correlations between different factors. And then drawing those conclusions, looking at published literature, and then drawing additional conclusions to try to prove, okay, based on my philosophy, is there a correlation between, we'll say, mercury and aluminum and chronic toxic encephalopathy, CTE, and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. One CTE people are very familiar with now because of concussions in sports. People aren't familiar with the type of CTE that's been studied and proven over the last 30 years as the primary cause of Alzheimer's, dementia, and memory loss. And looking at the correlation between the two, because you have aluminum and mercury that are in the brain that over time congregate and create this plaque and tau, which decreases memory and cognitive function. But when you have your brain shaken like a snow globe, from a concussion, it creates an increase in ionic activity. And you go, well, because our brain's electric, you have that increase in electrical activity. Those heavy metals are going to be drawn to that area like a magnet. And they're going to create tau earlier on. So maybe that's what's causing the problems. And that led me 10 years ago to calling Boston University to have a conversation with their research team to ask them, hey, are you guys looking at the mercury and aluminum content in the tau in the brain of some of these football players? And they're like, no. We know what the problem is, yes, but we're not doing that because the NFL would not let us continue the research. But it's a matter of just finding the subjects that you find pleasure in, and or whatever source of information you like, and really just diving into it and drawing conclusions. And I think each one of us, we're given innate gifts, right? And we're all given a purpose in life. But most of us never figure out what those are. We spend our time going through life trying to figure out what our mission is, what our purpose is, what we're intended to do, how we're supposed to serve, right? Because like I said, I grew up in an environment where both parents came from alcoholic religious households, and they told me, my brother, my sister, figure it out. And so I studied a lot of religions, and because I wanted to understand what everyone was talking about. Why were Christians better than Catholics, or better than Buddhism or Taoism or Islam and Hindu, and what makes them different, and where do I lie in all of that? And what I found is that when you look at Christ, most of the books that are written are predicated on acting Christ-like. That's all. Not all the other stuff. And he did three things: walk, teach, and heal. So for me, my philosophy has been based around, okay, if we're supposed to act Christ-like and we're all given our gifts, we just have to figure out how to use what we have in order to follow what he did. And for me, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, kind of the same question came up to, like, how do you do all of this stuff? I'm like, I don't know, this is just what I'm made for. This stuff's easy to me. Being able to draw the conclusions and look at this stuff, it's one of those things that God said, you get to do this, and then you get to be a messenger. And as Samuel L. Jackson said in Pulp Fiction so well, I'm just trying to be a shepherd.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, back to the volcano question, was you think of a volcano as just complete destruction, right? And I've never looked at it from the perspective when you said in those compounds in like a volcanic eruption, yes, destruction is first and foremost, but there needs to be something in that destruction that rejuvenates and rebuilds growth, because the planet wants to start clean from a fresh, clean slate, no pun intended. And so it's like, of course the earth is going to have molecular structures that when, yes, it destroys and clears everything, there needs to be something in the soil or in the ash that also rebuilds and starts over.
And one of the really good examples of that is what happened in my area growing up. Mount St. Helens erupted in, I think it was 84. My timing might be wrong, in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Eruption. and it dropped ash over the entire region. Go forward, let me see, 16, we'll say 30 years, about maybe a little bit less than that. So Eastern Washington had been known for growing strawberries and apples and a lot of agriculture. And the apple market took a dive about 20 years ago or so. And people over there started looking at the environment. They started doing new soil samples and found that because of the eruption and because of the new soil construct and because of the longitude and latitude that just so happened to be very similar to Bordeaux, France, that maybe grapes could grow well now in this environment because of the ash and the new soil environment and the external environment. They go, oh, we actually can make some of the best wines in the world now, all because of these changes. So you look at the destruction, but then you look at the creation.
Yeah.
And people, I was able to take a trip with my family last year to Santorini, Greece, right? It's beautiful, beautiful island. The water looks like toilet bowl cleaner. It's so blue. And we took a tour around the island, and there's 3 beaches that they have. And they talk about how the island, it's still an active volcano. I mean, it's where they believe Atlantis was. And the active volcano is still there. And we were taking a tour around the volcano and snorkeling and going through some of the mud, which is like bentonite. And they have a white beach, a red beach, and a black beach, all due from different volcanic eruptions. The red beach and the black beach are the newest, over the last couple thousand years from eruptions. The white beach is the oldest. It's the foundation of the island. So because we had internet while we were on the boat, surprisingly, I got on Google and I'm like, clinoptilolite in Santorini, because it's a white crystal. And sure enough, the entire island is clinoptilolite. And I was like, okay, this is why it's one of the spiritual centers of the world. And the water is so pure and clean because it's just cleaning itself naturally. It can't not be really, really clean because it's just one big filter. So it's interesting how nature provides. But the one thing that we know, and we've seen this throughout history, is that everything we've ever needed has been here for us. It's just whether or not we know how to use it until the time we need it most. Mm-hmm. And that's what's really intriguing, is we have never been in a point in human history where we've been more polluted, where we've been more toxic, not only environmentally, but internally. Spiritually, we're all jacked up, and it's time to clean house. Right? We're getting all of these different signs, however you want to put it, whether it's 2020 and we're seeing these shifts and people are starting to function differently and we're starting to become more collaborative culturally, and we're seeing all these changes, and it's a focus on renewal and detoxification, and we got to clean the environment. But most of us don't look internally and we focus on cleaning this environment because we look at this quarantine crisis. And Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart and Amazon have been extremely busy, right? Because people are at home and like, hey, we need to clean up the house. We need to do these projects. We're doing all this because we're like, we live in the house. We got to make sure it's really, really good shape. We don't look internally the same way.
No, because we don't look at our body as a house.
Yeah, it's you're supposed to be your temple, right?
Yeah, it goes with I love the saying is, how do you change the world? You start with yourself.
Yeah, you can't help anyone. You can't save the world. You can't clean up the environment without having a clean environment, because you're polluted and you're toxic and you can't think right. I think that's a big problem, is we have some really polluted people making really poor decisions.
Yeah, completely agreed. So how did the Root brand kind of come to fruition? I'm understanding that you saw these similarities with metals and toxins and how to, really kind of clean the body and remove those toxins. One, how did you really create the two products? And then where did the idea of the Root brand come from?
So it's, kind of based on the life experience. Well, really based on life experience. And we look at companies and go, oh, it's an overnight success. And I won't say Root's an overnight success yet. We're growing. But you see those stories in entrepreneurs, and people look at the finish line and they go, oh, wow, he did this. You don't look at the 10 years it took to get there. And that's really where things happen. I mean, our philosophy, you could say, is like better living through biochemistry, of using what nature created to clean stuff up, and that's what Clean Slate is really based on. In the 16 years or so that I've spent around the detox space, and my better half, my partner, my wife, is the smartest person I've ever met. She's an EDD, a double PhD. She's been in biotech for years with Alexion, Biogen IDEC, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, UCB. So she's created molecules to cure cancer. She's done cloning. She's done molecular design stuff. She screws around at Harvard in nanotechnology, bioscience, engineering. And you go, okay, I would kick my coverage. So John Sally's actually, though, I got to give John a shout out. Five years ago or so, John put us together because I was working with him in California on some detox stuff before I went down to Mexico to work with some cancer clinics. And we got to meet, and then a couple of weeks later, he met her in New York at an NFL and NBA Players Association conference on pharmacogenetics, and she was speaking. And just because of who he is, he's like, I don't know if you need to work with these guys, but you got to meet this guy I just met out in California. And so when he put us together on the phone the first time, she was in meetings and in her office, and I was on the beach. Not a bad trade. And we got on the phone, and it's the second time in my life where I got that tap. And God said, that's it. It's what you're supposed to do. You got to serve her. And we got to chat. We chatted for about 15 minutes and never met before. I never looked her up on social media, didn't know who she was. But by the time we were done, because we talked about cloning and molecular design stuff and stuff she's done and some of the concepts I was working on from a detox standpoint with what we do now. And, at the end of our 15-minute conversation, I just told her, I was like, I need you to understand something. I've told like 3 people in my life, my mom, my sister, and my ex-wife, I love you. But I mean it. And that's it. And we got to chat a couple more times. We got to meet in 2 weeks. And she just, look, if you want to work with me, you got to move to Nashville. I said, cool, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So finished my divorce, was in Washington, packed up my golf clubs, my clothes, and my Jameson because I had priorities. And moved to Nashville 5 years ago. And, from there, this concept started. And the focus on foundation and from a product design standpoint is crucial, and being able to provide value to a population. But then it was a matter of looking at how to do it. And having some of the knowledge and experience in the direct sales industry and having experience in regular sales and looking at how markets have changed, right? We've seen commerce change over the last 10 years heavily.
I've seen it change in the last 6 months, I think, heavily.
Absolutely. But we've become so connected through social media, just like we're doing here, that, a lot of consumption is done online, almost all of it right now. And if you're going to do things right and you're going to do things well, you can't follow the status quo. It kind of goes back to the same thing. You can't just say, I'm focused on this because this is what's been done, so we're going to follow that. If that were the case, we wouldn't have Amazon. We wouldn't have Apple. Steve Jobs would have stayed at IBM. And we wouldn't have Tesla, good, bad, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't have all the innovation that we have. So I sat back and, through the last 4 years, And this has been a year in development, and went to some colleagues and said, look, I want to create a distribution model that's built around sharing, that allows a community to share products and services, but instead of dropping millions of dollars into advertising on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Google, on all of these different platforms, so I have access to influencers. I want to create a model that we put the money into the influencers. That could be a mom that has a couple friends. It could be someone with 100 million followers on social media. And the ability to change the way that we look at commerce, because people need money, but people really want three things. They want health, they want happiness, and they want money. And if you can create a model that does those, or that can provide the opportunity to do them, you can change the paradigm. That's what Root is. It hasn't been done before, and it's a different concept on consumerism. But we took the concepts of Amazon, of being able to provide a platform that people can join for free. And initially, I've talked to a bunch of people about this over the last couple of weeks. You ask people, remember how Amazon started? I'm like, no. Like, Jeff Bezos was selling books out of his garage. I mean, selling books. Now they replaced books. I mean, he killed the own industry that he started in.
Yeah.
But you look at what he did, to where they created a community of people that were consuming products that they provided. And he said, you know what? How about we just provide more stuff? What if we just give you access to everything you might have ever wanted? And you can buy it from us, and we'll ship it to you. That way you don't have to go out and get it from anywhere else. And makes it really easy. I'm like, well, that's a community. But what if you take that community concept, and you only want to bring in the highest quality, whether it's products or services or collaborations with other companies. But instead of taking a lot of that revenue and putting it in my pocket, like I'm Jeff Bezos, because they're saying today that because of the rise that Amazon's on, because everyone's shopping on Amazon right now, because no one's going out anywhere else, that he could be the first trillionaire. What if we took a lot of that money and we put it back into the community, and we provided the opportunity to put money into the people that are creating the content, that are generating the revenue? It's a different approach.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not worth $1 trillion, but maybe you have a bunch of people making money that are able to have better lives and that are living better. That's Root.
Yeah. I think it's also kind of your methodology of starting with your own self, how to change the world, and then going back to community. It's like creating a product that's providing a way for people to get back to what it used to be. Yes. Community-based, health-based, about you, cleaning and clearing your house, and then spreading the word of how incredible this company and this product is. Because when you fall in love with something, case in point, iPhone, you're going to tell somebody about it. You're going to talk about it. So what do you do when you talk about this? Because when you, because it's very much like, I don't want to say a multi-level marketing, but it has a little bit of that flavor when you talk about it, and that puts a bad taste in people's mouth when they hear that, because they're like, oh, so now I got to pay to get in. I need to bring on 5 friends, and they need to bring on 5 friends.
Yeah, and that was some of the impetus in creating the model, is knowing that there's good parts to that concept, right? But there's a lot of icky and yucky stuff, just like you're mentioning. And that the original concept of MLM was actually good, right? It was the ability that we all communicate. It's just like these.
Yeah.
When you find something you like, you're going to tell your friends about it. But being able to create a reward on that. But the problem is that industry was bastardized by people that wanted to just make money off of it. That created companies that were Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes and, brought in a lot of the icky and yucky stuff. But there is a purity to the concept. It's a lot like socialism, right?
Right.
Socialism as a concept is quite intriguing.
Yeah, when you pick certain aspects of it, not blanket it.
Not when you get people involved.
Right.
It's like, so when looking at that, we designed Root as some of those concepts. We took the good parts, the ability to share and the ability to compensate people for sharing, because there's a lot of value in that. But we didn't want the icky and yucky stuff. The go recruit people, buy a pack, pay to join, all of this stuff. You don't have to pay any money to join Uber. You don't pay money to get an Amazon account. You might pay money to get products quicker, but you don't have to pay to join. You join for free, and people are used to that now. That's the way consumption should be. If you provide quality, people are going to want to buy it.
Yeah.
And if stuff works, they're going to continue to use it. So if you accept that you're going to assume risk by making sure that your sole position is on serving your community, right? This is the problem in politics today. Politicians don't fear those that they're supposed to serve. They think they sit above them and everyone else serves them, right? This is the collective issue.
Yeah.
Where it's actually inverse. So as a company philosophy, if our sole position is we have to provide products that work, we can't make stuff that sucks, we can't partner with companies that don't meet our vision and mission, and we provide value, we know that people are going to use what we have to offer. They're going to share with their friends. And if you do share with your friends, not that you're having to sell, but we love to tell our friends about stuff we have and stuff we get if it's good. So if you have that as a premise, as a company, and it's those people that are creating value for the company, and we're going to spend money on advertising anyway, because you have to, why wouldn't I incentivize the people that are generating a lot of the revenue that are creating the volume for us?
Yeah,
right.
They're your marketing team.
They are. I mean, look at the Kardashians. How many companies drop? Well, now we can say hundreds of millions of dollars into them for their influence.
Yeah.
And we're taking that concept and just making it available to everyone, that we're all influential. And when you talk with kids today, when I talk with my teenagers and I talk with their friends and we talk to the millennials and you ask them, well, what do you want to do? Like, I want to be an influencer. Great. How do you create influence? What is influence to you? And what do you want to do? Well, I just want to be able to travel, have fun, and do stuff. Great. How are you going to go about doing that? Well, hell, I don't know. Okay. Well, let me show you some stuff. Let me give you some ideas. So changing concepts. And I think it goes back to my educational process of just thinking differently. But that's what it was. It's like, look, we can't do what's been done. You can't innovate and then tell people that you're being different and do the same thing everyone else is doing. You actually have to be different. And that's really at our core. I mean, look at me. I mean, look at my hair today. I mean, look at my shirt. I'm not standard.
Yeah. And I would also say being of influence has nothing to do with being an influencer, because they're two totally different areas of the spectrum. I can be of influence, but that doesn't mean I'm an influencer.
Yep. And that's the big thing, is just teaching people, look, we all have the ability to provide influence and make an impact on others. I mean, with my much better half, with her work at Harvard, And there's a lot of conversations today about genetics and epigenetics, right? And how our environment affects us genetically. They have data that shows that a good conversation, even a 3 to 5 minute conversation between two people, has a lasting effect on that person genetically for up to 3 years.
Wow.
So you think about that. And that's just one form of interaction.
Yeah.
And how that can affect us positively. So you look at the ability to share and the fact that we want to be healthy, we want to be happy, and we love those around us. And if you find something, it's just like your introduction to Zero In. You have a friend call you and say, "Bruh, I just want to give you the gift of wellness or of health, and I found something, I want you to try it, or I'm going to send you a link. You got to try this stuff." You go, "Dude, I trust you. So yeah, I'm going to try it."
Yeah.
And then you go, "Dude, that's kind of cool." So
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. It's the homework is already done of doing the research to find out if it's a good product. If you're my homie and I trust you, like, it stops there. I don't need to do any more research. It's okay. Whatever you tell me is on a silver platter.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Zero In, because I think that's, as much as I experience Clean Slate. Yeah. Listen, let me give you my address. Send me all of that.
Got you.
I didn't get too much of a reaction from Clean Slate. I didn't. Some of the things that Ted was telling me that some of his friends experienced, I think, like cold sweats. I didn't experience that. So I took Clean Slate. I took the whole bottle and religiously took it. But it wasn't the impact that Zero In gave me was bar none. Like I was like, whoa, this is insane. Because I've done, and correct me, nootropic or nootropic?
It depends on your pronunciation.
Yeah.
If it's tropics or no tropics, I think everybody, it's tomato, potato.
Perfect. It's very similar to a nootropic, right? And so I've taken several others. Alpha Brain is the most recent one from Onnit. And, I was taking maybe 2 or 3 or 4 Alpha Brains. You're supposed to, kind of double, triple up on them. And I took 1 Zero In. 1. And I don't want to say wired, because that's not the way that appropriately describes it. But I was in a lane and I was focused. If it was writing, I was in it. If it was texting, if it was typing, if it was researching, if it was recording a podcast, and the best night's sleep. You would think that you're not or you're going to crash, or you're going to be up all night. It was the complete opposite of what I expected it to be. So let's talk a little bit about Zero In, because I think that product, to me, is like the hero product that you guys have, because people just have no clue what it can do for them in just everyday life.
Well, and you speak to some of the key components of the space, right? The nootropic, the biohacking, that community has become pretty massive because of the need for improved cognitive function, whether it's focus or just you making executive decisions and wanting that edge. And, whether you're gaming or you're playing sports or you're wanting to get stuff done, we crave one thing, and we don't even know we do it most of the time. We crave dopamine.
Yeah.
It's great. It's why cocaine was great in the 80s and never left. And so Zero In is what I use as an explanation is biohacking by biotech, right? And you look at the formulation, and this is what's crucial about it, is you look like Alpha Brain, since you use that as a reference, and a lot of the products in the market, and you see the advertising, and this is why Root is really developed as such, that you look at the amount of money, the ad spend that those companies are doing to get in front of consumers, to have really good looking promotional stuff. And you have people promoting the product. Joe Rogan and such does a bunch of stuff because they pay him a bunch of money for it.
Yeah, he's actually he's a original investor on it. Yeah.
So you look at what they're doing, and they claim to have all of these ingredients that are all good for cognitive function and brain function and memory and improved focus and clarity. So they took the medieval approach of making a witch's brew and just threw all of that stuff into one pot, mixed it all up, and said, all of this stuff is proven to be good. So we're going to mix it all together, and we're going to say, here, take 6 of these a day. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you know that, based on putting them all together, that it's actually going to do what you want it to do? And clean slate from a detox standpoint is very strategic in its process. Zero in being the same way. It's not just the ingredients, it's the quality of the ingredients, which is crucial, but then it's how you put them together. This little formula of, you can say 5 + 2, right? Because you have 5 actives and 2 catalysts, and took 3 years to perfect just the formula. And then we tested it for 3 more just to make sure it actually did what we thought it did.
Yeah.
And you look at that and you go, okay. And I've had people come back to me and they look at the formula. Well, it's pretty simple. I know those ingredients. Yeah. And Viagra has 1 ingredient. Works pretty good. Hits you like a ton of bricks, gets you hard to the board.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't leave as fast as you want it to.
It's gonna hang around. And maybe it doesn't hang around. Maybe it just stays with you.
Yeah.
And the important part is knowing that if constructed properly, if you give the body, the gut, the specific ingredients it needs, it's like making a cake, right? Or making your favorite pie. Say you like blackberry. You don't go out and get boysenberry, strawberries, lemons, blackberries, cranberries, and go, all of these are really good and they're really tasty, so we're going to put them all in the blackberry pie and we're going to bake this. No, you have a specific recipe that's going to give you a specific outcome.
Yeah.
That's what Zero In is it's a very, very specific formula designed to feed the body, feed your gut what it needs so it can produce dopamine and serotonin real quick. And like you said, 1 capsule on an empty stomach, in 10 to 15 minutes, it kicks. Me personally, I have found that I love 2 in the morning on an empty stomach, and I'm good for about 12 to 14 hours. Yeah. Usually 1 capsule lasts about 5 hours. And so it's one that it's different than everything else in the category because of how it functions. And if you have those experiences, you go, ooh. And the really interesting part is the difference between men and women, right? Because biochemically, like we were going over, guys, we function in boxes. Like you're talking about, I can just get stuff done. Women, big ball of copper wire, everything's connected. I mean, I have a wife that's super genius. So when we get in conversations and arguments, she references everything I've ever done over the last 5 years because she speed reads and has an eidetic memory. I'm like, no. We're talking about this. You don't get.
You can't go over there.
No, you can't use that box for this argument. That doesn't count. This isn't fair. But we function so differently that when looking at like dopamine and serotonin, women will become more relaxed. They'll become more smooth and they can multitask more effectively, where guys, we just become razor sharp and we're like, boom, I'm on it. And it's really interesting to see those, because when we were initially testing some of this, I was telling women, oh man, you're going to get razor sharp. It's phenomenal. It's going to kick really quickly. And then they were coming back to me going, I'm not having that experience. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at this and let's look at why. And then I had to start looking at dopamine deficiency and like women over 40. And now we're seeing a lot of it younger, that people are actually dopamine deficient. I mean, how terrible is that? The greatest neurotransmitter we make, you can be deficient in, which makes you feel good and allows you to just function well cognitively.
Yeah.
And also, relax when you need to. And part of that comes in with clean slate, with decalcifying the pineal gland as well, which is a whole other conversation. But being able to put your body in a position where, like you mentioned, it's not the jitters and then the crash and then the come down. It's a matter of just saying, here you go, make some dopamine and serotonin, let it go here, and then as it wears off, you're smooth.
Yeah.
And then you're relaxed and you feel good. You're like, wow, I just had a great experience. And that's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be, oh my God, I love this stuff.
Right.
I mean, that's why cocaine is so popular, because of the dopamine rush that it creates in a synthetic manner. But it does so much of it that if you're a guy, you want to have sex with everything you're around. And it has a tendency to blow up your heart and cause a lot of other problems, and is highly addictive. So we don't want all that stuff, but people love the dopamine hit. Where this provides an alternative to those, it provides an alternative to Adderall and Vyvanse and the amphetamines and some of the other stuff that you're using, because you're giving the body naturally what it needs to say, oh, I know how to do that. I just need the tools. Just, you know what? I can dig a ditch. I just need a shovel.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it with my hands because it's going to hurt and it's going to take too long. But if you give me the tools, I can get the job done. And
so I'm going to geek out a little bit with you, because you talked a little bit about the gut. So I was diagnosed with celiac disease probably about 7-8 years ago. So the gut and like the microbiome, I have studied and done a lot of research. I've taken a lot of tests to really be hypersensitive about what I put in my body, how fruits, vegetables, and meats and
glyphosate.
Yeah, like how it reacts with my microbiome in my stomach. I intermittent fast. So how does Zero In interact? Because obviously it's being ingested, and that's where it goes into your gut lining. One, is it breaking fast by the enzymes that it creates from the breakdown in the gut? Or because when you talk about taking it on an empty stomach, some people might be concerned that might break their fast for them.
Well, here's the fun part. I'm actually going to take you back to the clean slate side, because you don't have celiac disease. You're just polluted.
Right.
And it's commonly, or celiac issues, the gluten intolerance, it's glyphosate and heavy metals. So it's not like, oh, I have this disease. No, I mean, because you look at the timing of it, you go, well, 7 years ago I was fine, and then I started to see these symptoms, and now I have all these issues. You can look at exposure. And glyphosate, I mean, it's been in our environment for 40 years. And I mean, we could geek out and go into diet and lifestyle and everything else and exposure and where you would have hit it and where it's causing the damage. And that's where clean slate comes in, because it's able to bind a lot of those toxins in the gut. It's going to bind the glyphosate, and it's going to work systemically to clean that stuff out. So it's going to give your microbiome the opportunity to start to regenerate. And then we can get into colostrum and why you'd use a good colostrum product to actually regenerate the microbiome and feed some of the good components in there. But, just looking at it from a Zero In standpoint, with glyphosate toxicity, which is what celiac is, shuts off shuts off dopamine and serotonin production. So if you have those issues, you need this, because you can't produce it. Your body won't do it on its own. So you're not really breaking a fast in that aspect, because it's like with aminos.
Okay.
You can say, oh, am I breaking a fast with it? No, I'm just giving my body some of the key building blocks. But when you look at the formula, of this little dude, you're really microdosing. I mean, because you look at the amounts that are in the formula. I mean, it's 575 milligrams of actives and 100 megs of caffeine and 1,000 megs of D3 that are the two catalysts. You're not getting loaded up on a bunch of stuff. It's just that they're very, very strategically designed to be quite effective really quickly. So, I mean, if you can make the argument for some people like, oh my God, I'm breaking my fast because I'm taking something. I'm like, I don't care. I mean, it works. I mean, you want to feel good? Yeah, do it. I mean, you're not putting the gut in a position to where you're going to have to digest a lot, because it's synthesized really quick into those neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
It's not like you're adding nutrients, trying to do a lot. But this really goes to the key component where you look at the symptomology of one issue, but the cause is over here going, got to address this one.
Right.
While you try to do this. So that's why they're in combination, right? That's why we've got to remove. You get the bad stuff out with this guy, and then you add the good guys in so you feel good.
Yeah.
It's really, that convergence of the two. And I've actually had conversations with 2 friends over the last couple of days of similar issues, and they're like, all my GI issues are gone in a week. I'm like, okay, work pretty quickly for you, but sometimes it's a little bit more of a process.
Sure.
But
and so both the great thing, both products, non-GMO, right? Gluten-free, vegan.
Yeah, vegan. The gluten-free one gets into the conversation for me. And if you pull up some of the interviews I've done on YouTube with Dr. Don Huber, he's the world's leading expert on glyphosate. And I mean, it's one that he'll go over, better than I can, that we don't have a gluten intolerance problem. We don't. We have a glyphosate issue. People are really, really polluted with glyphosate. Wheat is sprayed with glyphosate. And the scariest part, we try to eat organic now, and we want all the non-GMO stuff, and we want no pesticides. What's really, really terrible about the game that's played with our food supply is some of the replacement ag products, the chickpeas and the garbanzo beans that people think are really, really healthy for them, use glyphosate as a desiccant to dry them out after their farm. So they're still organic, but they are the most loaded with one of the worst chemicals known to man.
Yeah.
And, we look at methylene resistance, so MRSA, and our antibiotic resistant issues that we have in our own microbiome. It all goes back to glyphosate. It's what glyphosate, that's what it does in the environment. It basically gives weeds a case of AIDS, and then the pathogens that are in the soil actually kill the weeds. It's not that it specifically is a weed killer. It destroys organ systems of plants and does the same thing in us because we're actually not that far away from plants. Wow. And so you look at the chemical reactions, and this is the important part of people are taught, whether it's through marketing or spin, to believe one thing to drive consumption a different way, right? But when you look at the science and you sit back and go, okay, is it really a gluten problem? Because I grew up eating wheat and flour, and I love chicken fried steak. It's one of my things. Mm-hmm. But you travel and you go to Germany. Like I was in Germany a couple of years ago for a healthcare conference, and they banned glyphosate over there like 10, 15 years ago. And so we go out, we have a bunch of beer because we went to Oktoberfest. Went to the first day of Oktoberfest. I learned something. If you drink as much beer as you have blood, you can black out. I had 7 liters of beer in 7 hours. I don't remember the evening. But the bread, the beer, you don't get bloated.
Yeah, everyone says when they go to Europe, because they have a gluten intolerance, they don't get affected.
There's no glyphosate over there. They banned it. It's not in the bread. It's not in the beer. They don't spray the hops down so they can dry the hops quicker. It's not there. So this should show you, like you're saying, oh, I have celiac. I go over there and I eat all the bread I want. Well, do you really think let's do the math.
Right.
It's the bread. It's what's on the bread. This is the issue. It goes back to the whole premise of this is an environmental issue. Right? We're toxic. The environment's toxic. We know everyone says the environment's polluted. We are a product of our environment from conception all the way through.
Yeah.
We are that. So you go, well, maybe that's the issue. Simple deduction.
Right. So let's talk about the ingredients, Zero, and you briefly spoke about them before. I think the one, and I had proposed this question through the synthetic caffeine, I think was the one.
Anhydrous caffeine, yeah. So it's dehydrated, basically.
Yeah, and so I guess you've gotten that question a lot before of when you say it's an all natural ingredients, but when people that are in the space, they go, well, what about the synthetic caffeine? And I don't want to hyper in on just that one ingredient, but I'd like to talk about all the ingredients. But that was what was proposed to me when I was talking to somebody about how amazing this product is. They were like, well, what about that one? So tell me a little bit about the ingredients and why they work so well together.
So, like, looking at the caffeine, you've got naturally sourced caffeine, but the anhydrous is just dehydrated. So they take all the water out of it to make an anhydrous form. And the funny thing is when people look at natural sources and they take nutritional supplements, it's like, you think they're not synthesized. So we try to be as healthy as possible in every aspect of our lives. But if people really understood what our food supply was like I have friends that are here in Nashville with me. Their family owns all the chicken farms in Jamaica and a ton of them here in the United States. And just chatting with them about, do you know what organic chicken really means? You don't want to know. You think, oh yeah, they're farm raised. Okay. And so when looking at a formula standpoint, we go as natural as we can. But in order to make sure that the products are working properly, sometimes natural components are synthesized, right? So you can dry stuff out, or you can tweak things a little bit. So in this instance, everything's all natural. The caffeine is dehydrated, so it's anhydrous. We use as natural vitamin D sources as possible. But then the tyrosine, the theanine, so 2 amino acids. Then you've got mucuna purins, which is a velvet bean extract, and you've got pine bark extract and pure curcuminoids. Those are as natural as you're going to get, and they're sourced very, very strategically. So not just that you're getting natural sources, but you're also getting the highest quality, because it's crucial, especially in the nutraceutical space, that you can have 5 companies that claim to have the same ingredients, but if they're sourced in different places, and you can say, oh yeah, we've got natural vitamin C. You go, okay, great. We have natural vitamin C that we source from Florida oranges, or that we source from acerola cherries, or that we source from China. They're all natural. Are they the same?
Yeah.
They're not. You're going to want the one from China because everything else you get is from China. You go,
yeah.
Oh, actually, I think I want to veto that one, Bob. So it's one of those where we maintain our authenticity and our integrity, because it's our foundation to go along with simplicity and education, and making sure that we're creating quality, that we're not putting people in a position where we can harm them in any way. But also making sure that we're going to get the results that are expected, right? And we are uncompromising when it comes to quality, and that's what's crucial. Because we want to hyper focus on stuff because we want control in our lives. Because when people mostly realize that really you don't have a lot of control, we say, okay, well, I need to do this right. Okay, great. But understand that this little component is done off of these things, and this is why it's part of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it's done strategically. And when you get people to step back and you go, okay, you're hyper focused on this, but you understand these other things over here that you're putting in your body, you're completely tearing your system apart. You go, yeah, but it's all natural. I'm like, yeah, but it's completely polluted. So what do you want? It's a matter of doing things right. And like I said, it's better living through biochemistry. There are some things that are better when synthesized, and that's the nature of the beast now.
Yeah.
Because we can't get everything natural that's going to do what we need it to do. We will source everything naturally, but you still have to do some work. It's like with what we do with Clean Slate, right? Is it natural? Absolutely. But are we just taking a powdered clinoptilolite and throwing it in water and saying, hey, we have this great detox solution? No, it takes a process to take what nature created to clean out the cage structure, to nanotize these fragments and come up with a solution that then is effective, from head to toes versus just working in the gut.
Yeah.
And it's that, the biohacking by biotech philosophy, saying, look, we're going to take science and we're going to take nature and we're going to put them together.
Yeah. There's a sex drive factor in Zero In, right? Is that from the increase in dopamine, or is that from the pine bark?
Well, it's all a little bit of it, right? Because the effects you have in the pine bark, the mucuna pruriens, the curcuminoids, and then the tyrosine and theanine, if you look each one of them up individually, for their mechanisms and some of the areas that they can be beneficial, you get some of those. And then you look at dopamine, and you go, oh, dopamine's shown to improve mood and improve sexual function. And so it's a matter of having a broad range of effect. We focus on the focus and mental clarity and dopamine and serotonin production, but there's the ability to balance mood, and some of those come from some of the theanine and such, to where they're stacked to work together. So if you have lady friends and you're going out at night and you want to make sure that they're in the right mood, say hello to your little friend.
And it works with male and female.
Absolutely. Because what's a key to our sex drive? You got to feel good.
Right.
You don't want to be stressed, especially for guys, because if we're in an environment where we're stressed and we're trying to improve sexual performance, it's not going to last long.
Yeah, not at all.
It's not very good. And the same thing for women. If they're stressed, you're never going to get to that mood. You never even get to have that conversation. And they're like, not tonight, not now.
Right.
But, it was one of those things I got to test on my wife. When I was talking about going through this phase, we were out with a couple friends one night, and she just had a rough time all week with work. She was really stressed out. We were sitting at the bar having a drink. She's just really edgy. And I was like, I'll be right back. Went out to the car because I had a capsule in the car, and I said, here, take this. She's like, what is it? I'm like, doesn't matter. Just take it. I want to see what happens. So she popped one capsule, and we're hanging out at the bar.
In the evening, she took it.
Oh yes, because it's not a stimulant. Right? Like you said, you don't get the jitters.
Right.
Crash.
So it doesn't matter if you take it whenever you want. It
does on a cognitive standpoint, because if you're wired like us, and depending upon what you're doing, right? If you want to work and you take one late afternoon, you're probably going to be late getting home.
Right. Right. You're going to be working.
If you want to go have fun and you're out having fun, you'll probably feel amazing.
Right.
So for her, we had our drink, we went and sat down, we ordered some food, and about 15 minutes went by, and our friend, she looked at me and she looked at her. She's like, whatever you just gave her, I want one, because she's different. And my wife looked at me, she's like, do not give me one of these if you want to go downtown, because it's going to be all bad for you. I feel good. Hashtag winning.
Yeah. Great.
So, and for having an outside party go, I want that feeling that she's showing right now, because 10 minutes ago she couldn't function, and now she's just really cool and she's chill and she feels good. I want that. And that's really it. And I think that I've had some millennials do some testing for me, with using it going out, and they're like, dude, how many of these can we take at once? I'm like,
can we microdose it?
No, they're like, no, we don't want to microdose. They're like, can we do 4 at once? Because you know what? If we drink a lot, it wears off. I'm like, we're not doing lines, guys. They're like, no, it's better.
Yeah.
If you don't crash, you don't get jitters, you don't have to worry about this stuff. I'm like, you guys are getting into a world that I'm not even familiar with, because I've never gone down any of those paths. But we're talking nutraceuticals here and just functioning better, and you guys are going, no. This leads to a really good night.
Yeah.
And it just goes to dopamine and serotonin. If you have the right mechanism and you're actually producing it properly, you're going to see that. Because the one thing I've heard from a bunch of people is, man, I sleep so good, and whether you're using both together or one, because this is going to clean up your pineal gland and decalcify your pineal gland, or you're going that side, because dopamine and serotonin, when it's there, allows you to be relaxed, whether you're alert and awake, but also when you want to go to sleep, you sleep. And you don't have that, oh my God, I just took this, I'm ready to go. So no, if you want to go out, you're going to sleep pretty well. And you don't have to worry about that crash and all the other stuff because of the mechanism. And that's what's important.
Yeah, that's so interesting. What really came to mind when I tried Zero In was, I can't remember the actor's name, but that movie Limitless.
Yeah. Some people say I look like Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
And they're lying.
I was saying yes, not to agree with you. I was saying yes, Limitless. You just think about like this magic pill that we're searching for to try and help optimize our brain functionality to at a level that is different for each person, but gets us all on the same wavelength of being able to take in as much information as possible.
And that's where the whole nootropic space came from. Was watching that. People were like, oh, what can we do to biohack our brains to do more? What can we tap into more of it? And, it honestly comes down to neurotransmission, right? But it's twofold. If we want to talk about neurology and brain function, it actually comes down to neurotoxicology, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's the neurotoxins, it's the mercury, the aluminum, the lead, and glyphosate that screw up your central nervous system and your brain, that inhibit synapses from firing properly or inhibits connectivity. So this is why the siblings are so valuable, because you've got one that can clean up the brain, then you've got the other one that feeds the gut with the neurotransmitters it needs to get everything firing here well. And you go, oh, okay, I see. Because you watch Limitless, right? And what's the premise of it? Yeah, he has this great function, but then you go, yeah, you're going to die.
Right.
So you go, well, I want all the good stuff, but I don't want the bad stuff. Don't give me the early death for 300, Alex.
Yeah.
No, I don't want that. Give me all the cognitive function. I want to feel amazing. I want to function amazing. And then I want to be able to go to sleep. So how do I do that? It's not synthetic, because we're not going to get there from a synthetic standpoint. It's a matter of how you use nature. It's everything we need has been put here, right? Mm-hmm. It goes back to that premise, but better living through biochemistry. How do we take these components? Which ones do we put together? How much of this do we need with this? How much tyrosine and theanine do we need to go well with the pine bark extract and the pure curcuminoids? And how much caffeine and vitamin D do we need to kick all those in? And if we add the velvet bean extract with the mucuna pruriens, what do we get? Say, okay, here, this is it. Because like the sibling to Zero In that we have, that we probably won't release for a little bit, we'll end up calling Happy. And it's a bigger boost in serotonin than dopamine. So if you look at functionality, for terms that some people might be familiar with, you have Adderall and Vyvanse that are similar in function for the improvement in mental focus and clarity, even though what we're doing is through dopamine and serotonin. So you go, okay, I want the focus, so I want those. The happy side with the increase in serotonin is much like MDMA. Mm-hmm. And so you say, well, I want 4 of those.
Yeah.
So, that's the fun part of what our focus is, because I'm really, really fortunate to be surrounded by a bunch of really, really smart people that have great influence on the community, because it's just like us being able to sit here and have this conversation. It's part of that community that we have, great intellectual capital and great resources of people to throw ideas off of, or that can come back. And this is the key of having a community, right? Because you can learn from, you can talk about herd immunity, you can talk about just collective intelligence,
Right.
right? And if you have a large number of people together, even if you have a village idiot like me, that you have the ability to, put these ideas together and start saying, okay, this idea came from over here, and then this person had this response to doing this. So, how do we work to tweak stuff? Or there was an idea that we had, someone wanted a weight loss formula, so let's get into that. And
Yeah,
how do we provide the greatest amount of value to the collective?
we're all connected.
Yeah, we are, and that's the fun part.
Yeah. So, what's next for the Root brand? I mean, you just kind of gave us a little bit of a glimpse of what's next, but I think not only on a product standpoint, but I think just on a business and growth standpoint, where do you see the Root brand going, and what is your year-end goal of kind of what you're looking for?
Well, we have the long-term goal of creating a community, like kind of like we were talking about. I mean, if eventually we get to where we intend, we'll be able to change social commerce and have a community much like Amazon, only very, very specific in what we want to provide to our community, right? And so you have that consumption network that everyone's sharing within, or that people are sharing to bring other people to the community. And, the real goal is just to be able to provide value, to improve people's lives, right? Which might go to my degree in humanities, because I got to be a humanitarian. But the position that we're in now is basically kindergarten, show and tell. And it's just show and share. So we're doing our parts to put tools together, do some promotional work to get product into people's hands, or to get people sharing, because that's what it comes down to. It's stuff like this, right? Where you have your influence over people that enjoy watching your interviews, the work you do, everything else you do outside of this, and teaching people that collaborate with us. But the best way for us to provide influence is for those that are in our community to share with their friends, and know that, hey, I tried Alpha Brain, I tried this stuff for 3 months, I took 4 to 6 of those a day, and I tried one of these, and this stuff's awesome, you got to try it. Great. It's like,
right.
That's it. And guess what? We'll give you a cookie for telling your friends to get it. Because the only way that someone can join Root as a community is to be referred by someone that actually knows about it. So it's exclusive, and
there's very much a velvet rope.
Yeah.
And it just needs to be opened up by somebody that's already inside.
Yeah. And usually with those experiences, you get to have an experience that's unique.
Yeah.
And that's really the crucial component, is that's where our job is to really provide value in that we're not charging someone to join. We're not requiring anyone to buy products in order to participate. If you like the stuff, you're going to buy it. If you like it, you're going to share it. And if you share it and other people buy it, then we're going to reward you for it. And having that, we have it proven. Now it's just a matter of show and tell. So great. How many people can we share this with? I mean, had I intended to be in 30 countries in 2.5 months? No, but we're there because people like to share. I mean, we're becoming a big deal in Africa. Really? I got to call Dave Chappelle. I mean, it's one of those things where you go, man, I never thought I was going to be in South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. But we are. And it's like, hey, we're becoming a big deal in Norway. Great, I love Norway. And so it's just a matter of just watching people share, watching things grow. And the thing that gets me the most, two things. One is I haven't provided my accountant all of her duties, because I love transferring money to people every day. It's one of the things that just pleases me greatly, to hit a button and everybody gets money that's requested. The second is getting responses from our members on what's happening to them in their life. Like you're talking about, it's like, dude, I was just razor sharp and I felt good. Or, you know what? I have one of my colleagues, she's a DOD contractor, and she's like, I've had these headaches and migraines and balance issues because I have a brain tumor. And after a couple days of clean slate, she's like, I don't have any of those symptoms anymore. It's a good trade.
Wow.
And now it's been about 3 months. And she's like, well, I went back in for my follow-up and it's actually shrinking. And I haven't had any symptoms in 3 months. And I'm not doing anything else. Like, yeah, the body does good stuff when it works. You know, so at the end of the day, when we're done in this world and we get to move on, and if we get questioned on what did you do with your life, right? And it goes back to the 3 things: walk, teach, and heal. What did you do? Well, I had this one tell me this. I had this one tell me that. You know, we had kids that were diagnosed as autistic, and now they're talking and they function normally and they're just really smart. Or had this happen, this happen, this happen. Is that enough to let me in? It's like, yeah, you did okay. You know, so that's really the goal. You know, is, I mean, how cool is it to talk with your friends and your friends go, dude, that stuff you shared with me, I feel so amazing now because some stuff I hadn't told you about is gone, and I didn't want to tell anyone I was dealing with these issues because I didn't know what was happening. Or, dude, my work, I can get 6 hours of work done in 2 hours, and now I'm able to go home and spend time with my family.
Yeah.
It's those kind of things. That's what feeds us. It's not the reward that most companies have is money, right? And that's what they chase. And if you do things right, money comes. It's a scoreboard, right? It's a way to calculate service. And if you provide value, you'll be rewarded in more than one way. We just want to create an environment that rewards people in different aspects. So
Money isn't real anyway. It's just a transfer from one to another.
it's a transference of value. Exactly.
Yep. Energy.
You know, so what is value? And I can tell you, you know, from a bartering standpoint, I get a lot of value out of this stuff. I can trade services with people. They're like, dude, I have one of my buddies that's upstairs. He's the national distributor for a company that actually I'm working on finishing contracts with them so we can distribute it. But they have a product that is a sanitizer that's silver citrate. So it's patented technology to make silver ions stable in the environment. So it kills everything from MRSA to HIV to Corona to all of this stuff. Proven by the EPA, published, safest, most effective, quickest kill time, longest kill duration. And when all this stuff started happening, he's like, we can kill it, but we're just waiting on the CDC letter to come back. And they have all of the approvals on it. He's going crazy now with all the companies that are buying, by the truckload and 55-gallon drums to start sanitizing all of their warehouses and facilities and everything else. And I went up to see him because we're getting these contracts done. He's like, dude, I'm going crazy. I'm pulling my hair out. I need more of those pills. I'll trade you bottles if you give me pills. And these little 3-ounce bottles are selling for $27 a piece. He's like, here's 15 of them. Give me 20 pills. I'm like, deal. All right. Created a value position. And so, and that's the fun part of just, if you provide value, you can do different stuff. So,
yeah. Well, I really commend you on the product and the business model and structure that you've done, because you've created a win-win, one, to help get an incredible product out for humans. And I think you put the value of that, the financial monetization of just talking about how incredible it is in the hands of the consumer. And not that many business owners, individuals are able to do that. They think of themselves first and then everyone else second. And I think that's very commendable. So I want to make sure that we plug, obviously, the company, but also you have a lot of great instructional YouTube videos. So where can everybody find you at?
Well, first, go to therootbrand.com, and there's probably going to be a link put on here so someone can have the username or code that they need to get invited in.
Yep.
Go look. You got to know somebody to get in.
Yeah.
And probably have that up. But you can find me on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm told I post things on Facebook some people find to be a little bit offensive. They're trying to pull stuff back. When you look, if you Google me, or if you go on YouTube, I'm not the black comedian.
Yeah.
I'm the other Clayton Thomas.
Got it.
So yeah, you can find me on there. I try to do a lot of different interviews, to talk about some of the subjects, and because this environmental toxicology thing is the problem. I just have a different take on it, a little different perspective. I mean, you can see, I'm a little bit different, but do your own research. I mean, don't just take me as a source of information. And honestly, don't do what I do. Don't spend hours going through PubMed, doing different searches and different stuff to draw different correlations. Take some of the stuff that you might hear from me. Take some of this in anything you do. Do your own research, but start using Google Scholar. Use DuckDuckGo so they don't track you.
Yeah.
Really take the information that you can gather. I mean, don't trust me. I mean, shoot, you don't even know me. And take some of those things and start doing your own research and try some stuff out, test some stuff. You go, you know what? Those theories are correct. And you know what? I can expand upon that. And that's really it. I mean, there's some really good interviews. I've had some really cool people I've been able to talk to, like Dr. Don Huber. Most people have an attention span of about 2 to 10 minutes. So I've looked at the number of views, and most people take about 10 to 15 minutes. But if you really want to understand how our environment and how glyphosate and some of these pesticides, the Roundup, is really destroying us and how pervasive this stuff is, instead of watching Ozark or whatever show you want to watch,
Tiger King,
whatnot, take an hour and watch the interview. Don't watch it because of me. I was just the one that was fortunate enough to actually have an open conversation with Don, because I got a hold of him 5 years ago because of everything I've done. But you will come away with that going, oh shit, this is not a good deal. And you have to just with that stuff, you got to plan accordingly. And
yeah.
Knowledge, what do they say? Knowledge is power. So we do what we can to get more of it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you allowing the interview. It was incredible unpacking your ability to just kind of get into this space, where you started, where you came from. So I appreciate you kind of really painting that picture for us. But what an incredible product and incredible company. So I appreciate it. So thanks everybody for stopping by. What I'd love for you to do is, if you enjoyed the podcast, go ahead and give us a rating on iTunes. Let us know what you think. 5-star rating is always loved and welcomed. Your feedback is always welcomed as well. I appreciate you tuning in to Just a Recording Podcast. Peace.